Hey, I'm Marie. I graduated in the class of 2005, so it's been well over a decade, and I'm sure a lot has changed over the years. In the last 10 years, a lot has changed, and I remember when I was sitting where you are that I had no idea what I was going to do next. I think it's really scary when you're looking at internships and when you're even just thinking about what's coming next after school. So I remember the fear and I remember the uncertainty, and I thought I would share with you guys a little bit about my experience since graduating, and just what I've learned since and kind of what I wish I told my younger self. So once I graduated, I started doing some odd jobs throughout the summer while I was trying to figure out what my next move was. I was applying to design studios, didn't really know what I wanted to do or what was going to be next. And I actually started doing a lot of work for trade. I did work for trade with a hat shop, a hairdresser, a personal trainer. I did whatever I could to just build my portfolio and get some cash in the door while I was figuring out my long-term plan. And then one of the projects that I was doing, or one of the contracts that I was doing, was actually around the corner from the place I did my internship. And where I did my internship was a really, really tiny design studio. And by tiny, I mean just one guy. And I would go to his house every day. I did my 3 weeks of internship. I'm not sure if you guys still only have a 3-week internship, but 3 weeks is not a lot of time to make a dent in a project, really. But I knew that I really, really enjoyed the small studio atmosphere because I love that my boss gave me he gave me a lot of free rein. He treated me like an equal. He valued my input. I got to see how he spoke with clients and managed projects. I got to see even the prices and kind of how he did his proposals. So I got to learn a number of different skills and wear many hats, and I really, really enjoyed that. So I knew that the small studio atmosphere was really what I enjoyed. So anyway, I went to check out the studio again and just said, hey, I was in the neighborhood and wondered if you might still need some work. And he said, you know what, actually, I could use some work right now. Fast forward 3.5 years later, and that was one of the most amazing experiences. It was, he was really my mentor for those 3.5 years, and I really just got to see how he runs the projects and just what things look like behind the scenes. And I became the interactive designer, and he focused more on the print and sort of client sales and project management and that side of things. So that was an amazing experience. But in about 3.5 years in, I started to get itchy feet, and I sort of felt like I wanted a bit more control over projects, and I just wanted to explore what else was out there. And around the same time, I was doing a lot of freelancing in the evenings and weekends, and at some point I knew that I was working too much and I needed to make a decision. It was one of the hardest decisions of my career, was deciding to leave full-time employment to go full-time freelance. Absolutely terrifying, but I knew it was the right thing to do, and I knew I had sort of outgrown that role. So I brought it up with my boss, and it was one of the scariest conversations, but he was so, so supportive, and they actually let me go down to 3 days a week working at the studio, 2 days a week to work on my own projects and kind of build up my own client base. And that was a really amazing way to kind of dip my toe into full-time freelance. Now, just for a bit of background too, I will say never in a million years would I have thought, looking back at myself in design school, that I would have chosen a path of self-employment. And so even if you're not necessarily thinking that that's a direction that you want to go, I just want to tell you a bit about my experience because, again, I wasn't expecting it and it wasn't in the plan, but it has been so, so rewarding. And I can't imagine now, I'm probably quite unemployable at this point, but I've been running my own company for a while now, and I guess for the last 8 years now of running my own business. And so I just want to share with you a bit about what that's looked like since taking the leap. So went out on my own after about 4 years, I'd say, of different studio experience, mostly at the one place for 3.5 years, and a few contract jobs at a few other studios. So it was the scariest leap. I didn't necessarily have a roster of clients lined up. I had a few clients here and there, and slowly over time, with a lot of hustle, I was working evenings and weekends all the time, projects for friends, projects for family, anybody that needed a project, I was willing to do it. And sometimes that meant doing projects that weren't super exciting, but sometimes you do what you gotta do to pay the bills and to build up your portfolio. So I did that for a number of years, and I'd say it took me probably about 3 years of working full-time on my own to really feel like I'd found my footing, and to feel like I'd found what my process looked like. And that was a lot of interactive projects, mostly web design projects, a lot of strategy work and marketing. And again, we don't learn a lot about marketing in the York Sheridan Design Program. It tends to be very, design focused. And I found that once I expanded my skills beyond design and started looking at other fields and kind of looking at other ways that I could really improve my skill set, and a lot of that was with strategy work, and that sort of has become my direction moving into digital strategy. So I was really able to amplify my interactive skills with the marketing skills. And about 4 years into working self-employed, I actually decided, because I could work from home and I could work from anywhere, why not work from somewhere really warm and tropical? So I actually sold everything that I owned, bought a laptop, and worked from Bali, Indonesia for about 3 months. And I just cannot say enough about that kind of experience. It was absolutely amazing. It's not something I could have done if I was employed somewhere, and I was able to cover my expenses, my airfare, hotel, living basically in a little shack in the woods for 3 months while I worked and traveled. Obviously, I worked at a much slower pace, and but was still able to make a really great living while I was living abroad. And that was, for me, just one of the big rewards of being able to be self-employed and kind of have more freedom over your schedule and how you work. So that's been amazing. Once I came back, I actually met my current partner, and within the year we actually decided to merge forces. And so we actually run a company together now called Okie Dokie. A few years into working together, I developed a mentorship program for designers to teach them some of the strategy that I've been doing with my clients, because it was doing strategy work allowed me to get much, much higher client budgets. And I noticed a lot of other designers were struggling with lower price points. They were having trouble getting clients to pay a few $1,000s for a website, and I was more easily able to get $15,000, $20,000 contracts. And I realized, I'm not necessarily a top designer. I consider myself an average to good designer, but it wasn't the design skills that really make the difference at the end of the day. It was the ability to help someone grow their business, and that required learning skills other than design. Again, adding digital marketing skills, user experience, and even things like emotional intelligence, doing a lot of personal development work. These things have really helped me become a better, well-rounded business owner. I'll also say that I used to be terribly shy. I used to avoid doing client meetings on video, or even phone calls. I like to try and do everything by email. And I realized at some point that my shyness and my introversion was going to keep me from being able to win bigger projects and to be taken seriously. So that's something I've had to work on for a very, very long time, is to work on my presentation skills and practice public speaking and that sort of thing. So, in the end, I'll probably summarize a couple takeaways for you, but one of them is definitely a willingness to work on those things that are holding you back, right? So if you do find yourself really shy and you're kind of afraid to talk to clients, it's so important to work on and improve those skills, because regardless of whether you're self-employed or you're working for an employer, being able to pitch your ideas and to get buy-in on your ideas and to have your work criticized and to just work collaboratively with other people, you're going to have to work on your own marketing skills. And you can't really escape that regardless of what your position is. So Anyway, now that my partner and I have merged forces into a company, we're called Okie Dokie. I run a mentorship program for designers to help them transition into strategists. And when I launched that program, it did so well that it actually allowed my partner to quit working with clients, and we decided that he was going to focus on building a software. So we now have a software platform for people that launch online courses, and a good chunk of what we do, the work that we do, is helping people develop their own online products and productize their services, build out training programs, build out online courses and productize services. So that's a big part of what we do today. We have the software, we have the design mentorship program. I have a new course coming up to help people launch the very first version of their course. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I do a lot of different things. These days, a good chunk of my time is spent doing consulting. A very, very small fraction is actually spent doing design, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I actually love all of these different sides of projects and kind of different ways of working with people. There's no way I ever could have predicted that I would be doing the kind of work that I'm doing today, and I don't even think that you could possibly plan that far into the future. I think you guys are entering like a really interesting time. You know, the market is kind of volatile in a way, like we don't necessarily know. I mean, I think about UX jobs today, and user experience wasn't really as widely understood. We didn't really understand what user experience design was, or we were just kind of on the cusp of it. And so roles that exist today didn't even exist 10 years ago. And I'm sure the same is going to be true for you as you enter the job market and you're trying to find your footing. So love what I do, love being self-employed. I work from home. I live in a really remote part of BC. I live in the woods, and you know, I have a lot of freedom with how I spend my time, make a great living, work with really cool people. And I never really realized that self-employment was a viable path. And I think it's allowed me just a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Super, super grateful. I'm really grateful for all of the experience that the design program has given me. But just to, you know, recap and just to kind of share some advice that I sort of wish that I'd had when I was where you are, is that the learning doesn't stop. You know, now that your degree is over and you're moving on, the learning can't stop. And that doesn't necessarily mean going back to school per se, but whether it's reading books, taking courses, hiring coaches has been amazing over the years, whether it's hiring business coaches. I've hired a systems coach to help me figure out my own client process. I've worked with a leadership coach. I've worked with a speaking coach. Worked with a lot of different people to kind of help improve and fill some of those gaps in my career skills. And so another course that I took was a design thinking and innovation certification, and that was really amazing with the University of Virginia. So you always kind of have to keep your skills sharp, and don't be afraid to look outside of design as well. The more that you can build your business skills, business, presentation, marketing, there's so many other skills outside of design, and I think it can be really easy to get stuck in the design bubble, to only go to design conferences and only, you know, buy design magazines. But there's so much happening outside of design as well, and there's so many industries that can benefit from design that I would just encourage you to kind of take a look at what else is out there. Another thing is to be your own advocate. So jobs are not just going to come to you. You guys are going to have to work hard, and it's going to be more and more challenging, I think, to stand out in a crowded market. So you're going to have to go out there and make opportunities for yourself. And, you know, I think who you know and an ability to kind of build your network and connect with people is going to be huge. And I always heard that, but I never really understood to what extent that was really true. But people remember how you make them feel, and especially if you're self-employed and you're kind of relying on people remembering you know, what you do and what you're available for, you're going to want to make sure that you're always building your network. And you also never know when you might need someone else to help you with a project. So sometimes you can see other designers as your competition, but often Those people are your collaborators, and those are people that refer projects to you when they're busy. So don't overlook your design peers as other people who can help you build your career. So if I were going to summarize a couple takeaways and just things that I've learned in the last decade or so, it's that be your own advocate. That means go out and find those opportunities and be resourceful. Go ask for what you want. Don't wait for projects to come to you, or don't wait for a great career to come to you. You've got to go out and find it. Building up your skills outside of design, especially business and marketing, are going to be hugely helpful, whether you're working in a studio or you're working on your own. And again, just never stop educating yourself. Always be growing your skills, personal development, emotional intelligence, reading books, taking courses. You're always going to want to be brushing up on new skills if you want to stay relevant in a very fast changing market. Expanding your network and connecting with more people. It might mean doing something that's a bit out of your comfort zone. It might mean brushing up on your business skills and understanding how to be a better copywriter, how to be a better communicator, understanding emotional intelligence. There's so many other skills, I think, outside of design that are so, so important. And I think they're equally important whether you are self-employed or whether you're working in an office, you're collaborating with people. You almost never get to escape working with other people. And so the more that you can brush up on those non-design skills, I think the design program can take you so far in terms of helping you understand design and design process, but just know that the learning never stops, and it shouldn't stop. So the more that you can integrate other complementary skills into your toolkit, the more successful you're going to be, again, regardless of what type of design role that you have. So I never could have predicted I would be doing the kind of work that I'm doing today, and just know that your career might look so different 10 years from now than it might look in your head, and it's totally fine if you don't know what that looks like now. You're going to find your way, I think, in the next couple years as you do more design projects and as you find your footing and you find your personal style as well. Don't try to be something that you're not. Double down on what works, and if you have qualities that make you quirky, seriously, double down on those, because those are how you're going to stand out. And it might not seem like it now, but your personal skills and what makes you really interesting as a person is it's going to hugely impact the way that you show up in the world and you show up in the design industry. So basically, be yourself, give yourself room to learn and to play with your career. Understand that even if you're not doing what you want to do in the next couple years, you can always pivot, and just make sure that you're always learning and always growing, and that's how you become a valuable asset. So there's lots of opportunities out there, whether it's self-employment, full-time, some combination of the two, working at design agencies, working in-house. There's so many options, and I know a lot of my peers took very, very different paths. When we look at what everyone is doing now, a lot of us are doing quite different things. So I think that's what's so exciting about the design program, is that it opens up so many doors, and you can really do so much with your degree once you're done. The options are open. And again, that can be a little bit intimidating, but just know that you have a say in what your career looks like. And I wish you all of the best. Seriously, hope you guys have an amazing internship, and I really hope that you guys give yourself that permission to spend the next couple years just learning and growing and figuring out what you really want. And if self-employment is in the future for you, and you think one day you really want to run your own agency, you can totally figure it out. Lots of resources out there. I feel like there's never been a better time to start your own thing. And I wish you the best of luck. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at Marie Poulin, MariePoulin. Happy to answer any questions, and I'm wishing you guys the best of luck. Cheers.